Welcome. Your art is a spell, and it will change your life and the world around you. Hey everyone, welcome back to Your Art is a Spell, where we explore the magical intersection of creativity, spirituality, and transformation. I'm your host, Edgar Fabián Frías, and today I want to take you on a journey. My journey of how I became the multi-passionate artist, witch, educator, and therapist that I am today. This was inspired by the fact that a couple of years ago, I created a dream job spell that took two forms: a meditation that was commissioned by the artist and writer Michelle T, that I'm going to be linking here in the YouTube video and also in the description of this podcast. And the dream job spell also took the form of a viewfinder artwork, and I will also be including that link in the description. So if you want to see it, you could also purchase it. I think there are a few left. But I didn't just wake up one day with this dream career. The path has been winding, it's been challenging sometimes, and full of unexpected turns. So buckle up, because today I'm sharing all the different jobs I've had to normalize that becoming who you are meant to be is rarely a straight line. So my first job ever was actually working with my dad. When I was really young, he would take us out on weekends and we would collect cans from garbage cans. We would go to the rich neighborhoods and we would look through their trash and we would collect cans to take to recycle. My dad always made this a really fun activity for us. I remember we would always end up going to McDonald's afterwards, so it always felt like a fun, celebratory thing to do. And later on, as I got older, my dad would invite me to other jobs of his. One that really sticks out was when we were tasked with emptying out the home of someone who had just died. It was challenging, but also really stayed with me for many years, because we literally emptied out an entire home together, finding photos, old magazines, records. All of these things told the story of who this person was. So you could see why this one really stuck with me. And of course, I also pet sat for people, and I grew up Jehovah's Witness, so I feel like another job I had, even though it was unpaid, was I would go door to door sharing the good news of the kingdom of Jehovah. I would also stand outside of donut shops, sharing what I believed at that time was the good news. So I've been a proselytizer for a long time, and in many ways, this is another iteration of me sharing the good news, but that news has shifted now, as y'all know. And, my first real job was working as a locker room attendant at a pool that was in my town. At this job, the universe gave me a gift. I met my first queer friend ever, Arturo, and I remember he came out to me on the first day of work, and I remember really struggling with that because I was still Jehovah's Witness, and I wasn't sure about how I felt at the time having a gay coworker. But I also remembered another part of me felt really excited to meet another gay person, and little did I know that I would be coming out to him a few months later. After this, when I started undergrad at UC Riverside, I became a peer counselor and I worked with students who were on academic probation. It was my first taste of being a therapist, and also really normalized the process of going to therapy for me. And it was during this time that I visited a therapist for the first time, and that fully changed my life. From there, at UC Riverside, I worked as a psycholinguistics laboratory researcher, where I was doing research using eye tracking machines and creating weird objects to see what words people would use to reference them. This work informed my honors thesis, which combined this eye tracking research with ideas of queerness and gender expansiveness, and the results of my psychological research I ended up putting together into an art installation. As you could see, I've always been drawn to bridging the gap between seemingly disparate academic disciplines. After I finished my honors thesis, I studied abroad in Northern England at the University of Leeds, which is about 2 hours north of London by train. I finished my art degree there. So my undergrad, I got both a art degree and a psychology degree. And I finished my art degree in Leeds at the University of Leeds. And after I finished it, I ended up moving over to Berlin in Germany. And I got a job briefly there as a gallery preparator assistant, where I helped install some shows. And I also helped communicate with the American buyers who would come to this gallery. After my time abroad, I came back to the US and I worked for a short time as a tutor where I was helping young children with their math and English skills. I did this for a few months while I saved up money to move to Portland, Oregon, supplementing my income at the time by dumpster diving with my friend Sergio and selling the things that we would find in the dumpsters at flea markets or swap meets, as they're called in Southern California. And we made quite a bit of money from dumpster diving. And with this money, we moved together to Portland, Oregon in 2008, right at the beginning of the recession. So as you could imagine, finding work was really hard at this time, and I had just moved. So the first job I could find was at a call center, helping people transition away from having regular TV antennas to receiving free digital antennas from the government. It was a bilingual call center, and I remember having to wake up at 4 a.m. and take 3 buses to get to this job. After this job ended, I worked at another call center where we were processing credit card payments for cell phone providers in Spanish. These were grueling, repetitive jobs where I was treated like a cog in the machine. I remember getting in trouble if I was just a few seconds late from my break, and we were timed when we went to the restroom. Shortly after this job, I ended up getting my first job ever as a parapsychologist or a therapist in training. I was working with families who were having challenges with their children, doing in-home therapy with them. And it was a bilingual position. And I remember this job was truly a turning point for me. It was really at this time that I decided that I wanted to become a therapist because I wanted to learn how to work with myself and with others to facilitate healing. While I was doing this, I was also organizing an underground queer music and arts festival. This was a fully community-funded queer art and music festival in Portland, and it actually grew out of Portland to a lot of places. This became a job of its own, even though it was unpaid, but it was definitely life-changing in many different ways. While I was doing this, I applied and got into graduate school to become a therapist at Portland State University in Portland, Oregon. I worked there in the college's counseling center as a therapist, and then I moved to a somatic and mindfulness-based therapy practice in Portland, where I did my internship and learned the Hakomi method for somatic and mindfulness-based therapy. Both of these jobs were unpaid, but they definitely taught me a lot about how to be a therapist and how to work with people. So once I graduated, I was high in demand as a bilingual therapist, and I got a pretty big promotion because I was hired as a program manager for a domestic violence program in Hillsboro, Oregon. It was a nonprofit center, and I helped to develop a therapy program for Spanish-speaking families who had been victims of domestic violence and their children. I really loved the work that we did in this program, but I realized pretty quickly this wasn't the type of work I wanted to do long term. So after being in this position for some time, I decided to move to the Bay Area, and the first job I got there was working with undocumented people who had been victims of crime, providing free therapy for them that they received through a free program in California. This position didn't last very long for reasons that I will not get to in this, but after this, I got a full-time job working as a social worker for the first time ever at the Golden Gate Regional Center in San Francisco. At this job, I had over 80 clients. All of them had developmental disabilities, many of them needing wraparound extensive care. This was one of the hardest jobs I've ever had to do. It exposed me to so much loss, stress, and danger. I worked at this job for a year and a half, and unfortunately, due to some terrible things that happened at this job, I was forced to leave the Bay Area and move to Los Angeles with my partner. This is when things really shifted. After moving to Los Angeles, I was gifted an amazing intuitive reading from my old art professor and dear friend, Asher Hartman, that fully changed my life. In his reading, he urged me not to look for full-time work as a therapist, as I had done many times in the past, and to really find a part-time job as a therapist so that I could really focus on my art practice. Even though it was hard, I decided to do it, and I got a job at a luxury treatment center in West Los Angeles where I ran a Saturday program that included art, experiential activities like horseback riding, going to the beach, visiting art museums, and running therapy groups. On my other days, I focused on my art practice, applying for grants, for exhibition opportunities, sharing my work on social media, and I slowly began to get opportunities that led to other opportunities. I met the right people who invited me to work on projects with them. And just as Asher had shared, I started to become both an artist and a therapist at the same time. Yes, this took a bit of time, and there were months when I was really broke, where I wasn't really sure if it was going to work out, but I stuck it through. And in spite of having so many different jobs and moving in a variety of many different directions, my love and passion for art has always been there. It's been unwavering, as has my belief that my artistic vision and voice mattered and were important. Those are the things that kept me going. And we need those as artists to really believe that we have something to share, because for art, you have to persevere and you have to have something that drives you. So as luck or magic would have it, just as I decided to leave my therapy job at the treatment center and open up my own therapy practice, this was shortly after I got my LMFT, or Licensed Marriage and Family Therapist, in California. I was awarded a 2-year artist residency in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This residency was fully funded. There was a stipend, I got a studio, I got housing, and I decided to do this because it would allow me to become a full-time artist for the first time in my life. Made the hard decision. I closed my private practice. I stopped practicing as a therapist. My partner and I moved to Oklahoma, and for the first time, I worked fully as an artist. And it was during this time that I completed 2 solo shows. I was a part of a biennial in Bogota, Colombia. I was a part of a biennial in Los Angeles. I shared my art at a psychedelic music and arts festival. I did so much during these 2 years, and I grew so much as an artist. During this residency, I applied and got accepted to UC Berkeley's MFA art practice program, which I had been trying to get into for years. I'll share another video here if you're watching on YouTube that talks a little bit more about my journey. I will also share it in the notes for this podcast. So my partner and I moved to Berkeley. I began to work there as an art teacher. This was during COVID, and I was also getting paid to do workshops and ceremonies and live interactions online. For example, a museum paid me to create a whole mindfulness-based program that I could offer their communities. And really, I pivoted a lot into the virtual realm during this time and got lots of gigs working virtually. So by the time that I graduated from UC Berkeley, I decided to restart my therapy practice, Therapy with Edgar, this time fully virtual and with an emphasis on somatics, heart's work, and I'm so happy to still have this therapy practice today. I specialize in working with neurodiverse, highly sensitive artists and multi-passionates like myself who are in the LGBTQIA+, poly, E&M, kink, and BDSM communities. This practice, coupled with my work as an artist, has helped me find the perfect balance that feels just right for me at this moment. I work one day as a therapist. I'm working another day at CalArts where I teach a class, and I dedicate the rest of my time to the many different art, writing, and teaching projects that I have going on. Yes, I have found my dream job. So looking back at this winding, nonlinear, multidimensional path, here are some of the lessons that I've learned. Number one, trust the seemingly disconnected dots. Each job, even the ones that felt like detours, gave me the skills and perspectives that make me unique in what I do now. Number two, your path doesn't have to make sense to others. What might look like career chaos to some was actually me gathering the specific ingredients I needed for my specific magic. Number three, listen to your intuition. The reading from Asher was a pivotal moment because I trusted it even when it went against conventional wisdom about career stability. I knew that this was something I really wanted. I tuned into it and I went for it and committed. Number four, embrace the both and instead of either or. I didn't have to choose between being an artist or a therapist. I found a way to be both on my own terms, and you can too. Number five, your dream job might not exist until you create it. I've essentially crafted a career that didn't exist in any job listing. By combining my passions and skills in unique ways, fully committing to them, and finding, building, forging a web around me to support me in all the different ways I show up in the world. And I want to emphasize this. There are so many ways to get to where you want to go, and it might look different than what you thought it would be. The path might feel weird, non-linear, not right, according to societal standards. But that doesn't mean that it's wrong. I haven't even mentioned all of the ways that I worked, as some jobs lasted for even shorter amounts of time. Some of them are embarrassing, to be quite honest. I've been paid to do dozens and dozens of things, from officiating weddings to speaking about my art with high schoolers and at universities to hosting virtual support groups for artists and offering tarot readings at libraries and galleries. One big thing that has come out of this journey is that I've learned I'm no longer a worker. I'm a creator, a deal maker, and someone who gets to show up in as many ways as I feel called to. So in our next episode, we'll be talking with an artist who I feel also follows this multidimensional nonlinear path. Her name is Reina Prado, and I look forward to sharing our conversation with you. In the meantime, please subscribe to this podcast, share it with your friends, sign up for our newsletter at yourartisaspell.com. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I want to invite you to give a thumbs up, click subscribe, and leave a comment. How does my journey compare to yours? Do you have any questions about any of the steps or jobs that I've had? What are your dream jobs? I want to hear. And also, I want to mention that as a part of season 1, I am going to be gifting a free 30-minute tarot reading to someone who leaves me a review. Go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave this podcast a review, and I will be selecting a person in a future episode to receive a free 30-minute tarot reading with me. Until next time, remember, your art is a spell in whatever form it takes, and it will change your life and the world around you. Bye.